Hey there, welcome to the Grace Health Podcast, your source for aging strong in your physical, mental, and spiritual health. My name is Amy Connell. I'm a weight neutral certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who loves walks with friends, chocolate, and Jesus. Whether you're looking to grow stronger as you age, nourish your body, mind, and spirit, or fit all the pieces of your health together to holistically thrive, this is the place for women over 40. I am here to guide you in the areas I can and bring on experts in the areas I'm still learning. And of course, we cover it all in a whole lot of grace. I'm glad you're here. And by the way, if you are new here, I invite you to go back to season 19, which started January 9th, 2024, to fully understand the foundation of the show and what we're about. In short, this is an intuitive eating-based, grace-filled, and Christ-centered show, focusing on women over 40 who want to age resiliently in a holistic way. And then be sure to check out the bonus episode in season 19 called 30 Plus Non-Gym Ways to Improve Your Health, and grab the free download that goes with it. All of those links are in the show notes. Okay, today we are finishing out our series on intuitive eating. Today is episode 10, Gentle Nutrition, and I have Liesel Maddox here to guide us through that conversation. Let me tell you a little bit about Liesel before we get into it. Liesel is a registered dietitian nutritionist specialized in eating disorder treatment and food freedom. We all want food freedom. Liesel provides nutrition counseling and group coaching to Christian women who are ready to break free from diet culture and disordered eating while healing with food and body image. She's in the process of becoming in network with a few major insurance companies to provide more affordable, accessible nutrition support because everyone deserves food freedom. Amen to that. Liesel lives in Colorado Springs with her husband and their dog and enjoys skiing in the winter, hiking in the summer, a good novel, and finding the best brunch spot. Liesel, we would be very tight friends if I lived in your area because I love doing all that stuff as well.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I am happy to be here today.
I'm excited to have this conversation about gentle nutrition. So my first question to you is, can you just describe an overarching view of what this means?
The principle of gentle nutrition was very intentionally placed last in intuitive eating because it really is what I would describe as a dietitian, a more advanced skill to be able to navigate eating in a way that's not based on food and diet rules and acknowledge that different foods provide our bodies with different nutrients. Really, the definition of gentle nutrition in intuitive eating is that you don't have to eat perfectly to be healthy. You're not going to get a nutrition deficiency or suddenly become, quote, unhealthy, however we're defining that, from one meal, one day of eating, even 1 week of eating. Sometimes, maybe one vacation's worth of eating. And that it's really more about kind of our overall, what I like to call the big picture, bird's eye view of our nutrition intake that counts and that does, sometimes impact our health. And the reason this principle is placed last is because it's going to be really difficult to be able to think about, maybe the health benefits of different foods if someone is still really ingrained in a dieting or, maybe disordered eating mentality. Over time, with practice of, making peace with food and challenging the food police, it's going to become easier and easier to think about sometimes the nutrition content or the different nutrients provided from food in a way that feels more just kind of easy and intuitive without feeling like that's going back to a place of restriction and having to say no to maybe the foods that used to be fear foods or the off limits food. And really, gentle nutrition is about finding that balance of both the, maybe more nutrient rich foods and the foods that we eat simply because they enhance our lives and bring joy to our lives.
I love that you used the word balance. one of the things that was in my tagline, which most people don't really see if they're not going to my website, but I chose the tagline from when I started doing all of this stuff in 2016 of balanced, healthy living. And then it was with a lot of grace and a little chocolate. And balance is hard. I really like how you talk about big picture and the bird's eye view. As we're talking and as we're recording, I'm actually traveling right now. And so when you talk about how, you're going to go on vacation and you're not going to, eat the way that you normally do. And that's okay, because it's like, what's the bird's eye view of your health? I'm like, okay, that is me right now. And 5-10 years ago, I probably would have been having a lot more feelings about it. And now I'm just more tuning into my body going, I kind of feel bloated and ick because maybe I ate a little more than, what my body needed last night. So what kind of changes am I going to make today so I'll feel well, not because I feel shame for eating it?
Totally. I think that's such an important perspective to keep of like, the more someone practices the other intuitive eating principles and really practicing what we call that interoceptive awareness, that attunement to how does your body feel, that's what's going to guide food choices that incorporate gentle nutrition. And just like you mentioned, if you've had a couple days where like, hey, you're just not feeling as great. And, as a dietitian, this is one thing that I talk about with clients a lot. Let's say we're looking at like digestive issues and it would feel good for your body to eat some more fiber. Well, that's a great, gentle nutrition oriented way to bring some more nutrients, a nutrient like fiber that has amazing health benefits for our bodies by thinking about like adding more of that rather than the restrictive mindset of, man, what do I need to cut out or take away to be good, quote, with my diet, with my nutrition. And so it really is all about truly being in tune with how your body feels to guide those choices rather than diet culture's restriction-based rules.
Yeah, the restriction-based, that does seem to be that, like, that's how it points from one to another, or that's kind of the visuals that I'm getting for that. I read a lot, and I love learning about nutrition science. I love learning about that kind of stuff. And I think I'm finally at a point where I can apply some things without getting too obsessive or legalistic or however you want to call it about it. And I'm thinking of one book in particular that I read that was interesting in a lot of different ways, but also bothersome in others. And in it, the author was kind of negative toward intuitive eating because his whole thing was, well, that's just so that way people can eat what they want. And intuitive eating is just people's choice to eat whatever they want and not worry about the nutrition and the food and how it affects our body. I have to imagine, I can guess your initial thoughts about that, but you can tell us and then go into a little bit more about why you feel that way.
Yeah, to me, that sounds like someone who maybe hasn't fully understood what intuitive eating really is. And I would, just to kind of build on like the other 9 principles that have already been covered, intuitive eating is not simply eating whatever, whenever, however much we want with no regard to how our bodies feel, and by feel, I mean physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because otherwise that wouldn't be intuitive at all. That would be the opposite and just not being attuned to our body's signals, especially, I think like fullness is one that I would bring up in this topic of conversation of, it wouldn't feel very good if we were never paying attention to our body's fullness signals or other signs that, hey, maybe the way we've been eating doesn't feel as great for our bodies if we're feeling really tired all the time or not having the energy you need to engage in movement that feels good or just activities of daily living every single day. Intuitive eating, and to get to this point where you can kind of start practicing some gentle nutrition in your day-to-day life, needs to build on all the practice someone has already put in to really listen to their bodies. And I like to say that gentle nutrition is kind of where all of those intuitive, listening to your body's skills do start to meet the times where we're incorporating the nutrition science and sometimes even leading with, I like to call it leading with logic. There are times where we know that it's helpful for our bodies to eat about every 3 to 4 hours, for balancing our blood sugar and helping our metabolism, things like that, balancing our energy. And so we want to kind of mesh that with also listening to our bodies. Because what do you do if you wake up and you're just not hungry for breakfast, but, intuitive eating or maybe a dietitian you've been working with is saying that you should eat breakfast. And so gentle nutrition really does incorporate all of those listening and attunement skills with sometimes the logic or the nutrition science of what do I do if I've been told I need to do, X diet for a medical condition, or what about even just an allergy, or how do I incorporate these nutrients that I've heard have a lot of health benefits, but I also don't want to go back down the dieting rabbit holes. So that's a longer answer to your question of, yeah, I would really want to explain to someone that intuitive eating is so much more than simply eating whatever, whenever, however much we want, because the whole point of it being intuitive is that we're listening and we're following our body's lead and also incorporating some of the just, nutrition science that might be helpful for our bodies and for our health at times.
I wrote down attunement plus logic, and I love how you just put those two together. You brought up something, which is something I wanted to talk about, because I think this can be a bit confusing, or maybe we're not quite sure what to do with that. And that is this concept of when we have some more medical reasons to make some changes. As we get older, and especially as women get older, our HDL starts to lower, which is our good cholesterol. Our LDL comes up. All of this is based off of our estrogen. We lose insulin sensitivity. These are things that are happening. So, Liesel, I'm wondering if you can guide us through. Obviously, you are a registered dietitian. You are not our registered dietitian. And I understand that all of our bodies are going to be different. But can you guide us through maybe just our mindset of how we take some of the nutrition science that we know can be helpful with those, or triglycerides or whatever, and also couple that with intuitive eating and that mindset?
Yes, I love this question because it's what I get a lot just from clients or, even just in casual conversation when I'm talking about intuitive eating is how do we reconcile, actual maybe medical or physical changes that are happening in the body and eating intuitively, especially if those medical related changes typically have some sort of eating recommendation that goes along with them, whether it's true and evidence-based or it's more of a cultural myth or misinformation. And how do we challenge those things? Eating intuitively and practicing gentle nutrition works with any sort of health and medical condition with very, very few exceptions. I'd say that probably the only exceptions, the only times where it's going to be really hard to practice gentle nutrition and eating intuitively with a medical condition is if you're, let's say, 12 to 24 hours before surgery and you've been told not to eat or drink anything. Or let's say you're immediately post some kind of intense surgery and you have to be on a fully, let's say, clear liquid diet. Yes, at those points, it's probably going to be really hard to eat intuitively. And I would even argue as a dietitian, that's not the priority in those first few days. Your body's immediate recovery is, and it's okay if we're just trying to focus on fluids and whatever you can get in your body. But for the most part, medical conditions that do have some sort of diet-related component, and by diet, I just mean food recommendations, not like, a weight loss oriented diet per se, you can do that as you are eating intuitively. And I think the key here is really, like you said, to know someone's individual background and health history And I would really encourage people to think too about working with a dietitian who has both, an intuitive eating, non-diet practice model and can provide you with what we call medical nutrition therapy, which just means managing different, medical conditions, or maybe we're looking at different points of your lab work to help make changes, but not from a diety way. And I love that you brought up things like cholesterol or insulin sensitivity, because I think these are really good examples of lab values that sometimes can lead to changes in someone's, health conditions or maybe a different diagnosis, where what we've been told from our culture in general and from diet culture is that we have to cut out all sorts of different foods to target those lab values or to help with insulin sensitivity. However, with those things, when I look at it from a medical nutrition therapy standpoint, and all the evidence, there are actually so many different things we can do to help our bodies out and improve, let's say cholesterol or insulin sensitivity by focusing on what you can add in to your diet, maybe focusing on different nutrients like fiber or protein and different sources of dietary fat that are going to help balance blood sugar and help to, fiber is one of the best ways that we can reduce cholesterol. Getting inconsistent movement that feels good for someone's body is a great way to target both improved insulin sensitivity and lowering cholesterol. And those are things that don't have to do with cut out, XYZ foods. And so the main thing I'd want to leave people with, if they're navigating some sort of, medical diagnosis that has a dietary component for treatment, or, they're wanting to improve their lab values, is that we can actually do a lot more than just, you need to cut out this, and this, and it feel very restrictive. There's a whole range of ways that you can add things into your diet or focus on other, what we'd call like health promoting behaviors. And it hopefully will feel a lot more freeing than how restrictive it feels to be told, okay, I've got to cut out these different foods. And I basically feel like I'm back on a diet, which if someone is on this intuitive eating journey, I would imagine feels very defeating to be told that. So I would really recommend, if someone's managing a certain health condition, consider working with a dietitian who can help you along both in your intuitive eating mindset and manage medical conditions to optimize your overall health in the process without it feeling like you're going right back into a diet.
I love that. And this is what I love when this happens. So we have these conversations and someone is on for one thing, and I've had conversations with someone else, and you're saying the exact same things without, and it's not planned, but it's supporting people. And it makes me think of two conversations I've had with the same person, who is Dr. Maria Colon-Gonzalez, who's functional health. And I have an episode coming up with her this season on cholesterol. So I was expecting, actually, it wasn't cholesterol, it was diabetes. We've had one conversation about cholesterol. I'll link to that if you want to listen. We're going to have another one about diabetes, and same thing. She didn't come in saying for for cholesterol, you need to cut out this, cut out this, cut out this. It was increase your fiber, increase your beans and legumes, increase your seeds. And so I love it when those things are complementary in our different conversation. Okay. I know for a lot of us who have grown up in diet culture, one of the things that's appealing sometimes about diet culture is you get the book or the manual or the program, and it says, do A, B, C, D, and E. And if you do these the right way, you will be successful. And of course, we know now that they make all kinds of promises they can't keep. I think the appeal for many people is they just want someone to tell them what to do. And that is difficult in intuitive eating, and particularly with gentle nutrition. How can we start to feel more confident in our wisdom, in our why can't I say this? in our inner awareness. And just guide us through that, because I have to imagine you've had these conversations as well with your clients.
Yeah, I think the biggest component is time. And I know that's not a fun or glamorous answer to hear, because so often I think as human beings, we like instant gratification. We like overnight changes. And then on top of that, diets and diet culture has programmed us to believe that making changes with nutrition or our bodies or weight can be as simple as, this 30-day program, or all of those different false promises of overnight changes that we get from diets. And that is simply not what intuitive eating is. And I would even go further to say that's not how God designed our bodies and the food to work either. And so learning to find that gray area and really listen to your body without diet rules and be able to think about the gentle nutrition component, again, without it, quote, triggering, old diet patterns, thoughts, and beliefs. It takes time, and it takes a lot of time of being really patient and being really gracious with yourself, being able to recognize when a thought creeps in that, when you examine it, you think, that could lead me down a route that I've been down before, and I don't want to feel that way anymore. That it's better to take your time and maybe even go back and revisit those beginning principles of intuitive eating as many times as you need to before it really feels, I would even say, safe to start practicing gentle nutrition. And I know because of how much our human brains love rules and being told what to do, and we really like things that are black and white or all or nothing, it can be really tempting to feel like I have to do the intuitive eating principles in order. And once I reach number 10, I better be ready to start practicing gentle nutrition. But it's okay to maybe, again, go out of order, go back to some of the principles where if you're getting really stuck on making peace with food, it's going to be really hard to practice gentle nutrition. And just to kind of set some realistic expectations here, I really think this is a principle that for people who have struggled with, maybe years of chronic dieting, disordered eating, and definitely if you've struggled with eating disorder and you haven't necessarily been in recovery for years and years and years yet, this principle is probably going to take years to fully embrace. And I say that as someone who, my passion for nutrition and treating eating disorders comes from my own experience of having struggled with one as a teenager and then getting in recovery, deciding, and not really me deciding, but more of the Lord laying it on my heart that I really cared about helping people in this way. And I can say now it has probably been over 11, pushing 12 years of practicing intuitive eating that I feel much, much more comfortable with this gentle nutrition component and being able to say, yeah, you know what? Eating this food would feel good for my body today versus, hey, I'm going to pass up this food, not because I'm restricting, but because my body wants something else today. And honestly, I think even, 5 years ago or so, which would have been about 5-ish years into my own eating disorder recovery, that would have felt kind of threatening to me in my relationship with food. It would have felt restrictive to say, oh man, well, what if, should I get the salad instead of the burger and fries? But intuitive eating says that I can get the burger and fries. It just would have been really overwhelming and confusing. And so, although I know it's not the fun and glamorous answer we want to hear that things are going to just happen overnight, I think for a lot of us who have struggled with food before, it's okay to be really patient with ourselves and know that it might take years to really embrace this principle, and that's okay.
Well, thank you for that, because you're right. We are just moving even faster and faster and faster to an immediate answer for everything. And thank you for the reminder that it can take time and it can take years. And we are sitting here listening and we have been in diet culture for years. It's going to take time, and you're telling us that's okay. So I love the grace in that. I appreciate that. Liesel, if someone is listening and thinking, okay, I want more, I need more Liesel in my life, tell us how someone can work with you if they are interested.
Yeah, so there's a few different ways you can work with me. I provide right now pretty much solely virtual or telehealth nutrition support. I am located in Colorado Springs, so if by chance someone's listening and you're there, we absolutely can find a way to work together in person, but for the most part, we would be meeting online. I offer one-on-one nutrition counseling, either for eating disorder recovery and for, kind of a non-diet food freedom, intuitive eating approach to helping you heal your relationship with food and with your body. And I love also getting to incorporate that medical nutrition therapy piece. If someone is managing maybe a different health condition and we're trying to marry those two recommendations together of intuitive eating and, if there are maybe some dietary recommendations for managing their health. With that option, I am in the process of being in network with Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, Cigna, and hopefully United Healthcare to provide a nutrition support that could be covered by your insurance up to 100%, depending on your health insurance plan. Aside from that, I also offer group nutrition coaching for people who want more of a community format for learning intuitive eating from a Christ-centered approach. And that option involves an online program with 12 learning modules, weekly group calls, as well as 3 individual calls throughout the 12-week program, and a group messaging community. That group option is slated to come back in the early fall 2024 timeline. So there's currently a wait list for it right now. And if you're looking to get started with a registered dietitian sooner, I'm offering those one-on-one online services. And people can learn more about those on my website, which is lieselmaddoxnutrition.com, or visit my Instagram page at Dietitian Liesel, and you'll find all the links on there as well.
Great. And yes, this is airing at the end of August. So this is perfect timing for those who are interested in that. And I do love following you on the socials whenever I'm on the socials. Not so much right now. Okay. One last question. What is the one simple thing you want us to remember about our conversation today? And you're also going to be the last one simple thing of intuitive eating. So this can be as big or as small as you want. You get the final word on gentle nutrition and intuitive eating.
Oh, I'm honored to get to have put the cap on that conversation here. Time. And I would say that applies for intuitive eating, all 10 principles, and for this last principle of gentle nutrition. This is not the quick fix, false promises of diet culture. This is the really slow and steady progress kind of journey in getting to know your body's God-given intuitive signals again, in doing all of the unlearning that it takes to rip away the false beliefs and rules from diet culture, and giving yourself just a ton of grace on this healing journey. And specifically to this last principle of gentle nutrition, I would just really encourage anyone listening, give yourself the grace to put this one on hold if you need to. Again, it really took me probably over 5 or 6 years before I felt like I could really make gentle nutrition food choices without it feeling restrictive or, quote, triggering for my history of having had an eating disorder. And so be patient with yourself in the process and trust that over time, the more you keep practicing, the unconditional permission to eat and making peace with food, not going back to diets, that's what's going to make it easier to make those gentle nutrition choices at times. But no matter what, just giving yourself grace and knowing that there's nothing wrong with you or that you're doing wrong if this whole intuitive eating process is taking a little bit more time than you anticipated, but it's definitely worth the journey.
Awesome. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day.
Thanks for listening today. If this episode was valuable to you, could you do one of two things that are enormously valuable to me, but super simple for you? Number one, just share this with a friend. Super simple. Number two, provide a rating and review, particularly if you listen in Apple Podcasts. This is super valuable for me. Also, if you haven't yet subscribed to my monthly journal, why not? I send it out twice a month, and it is a private, fun space for me to share some of my favorite foods and recipes, movements, books, sermons, and more. You never know what you're going to get, but I promise it will add value to your day. You can sign up at gracedhealth.com/monthly-updates. And of course, the link is in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time. Hey, I'm so glad you've tuned in today. Thank you. A quick note before we go. This podcast has over 400 episodes and is on a journey of growth and evolution, just like all of us. Some episodes before January 2024 may contain references to diet culture or perspectives that don't fully align with our current approach to health and wellness from a weight-neutral, intuitive eating perspective. So, listen with a discerning ear, take what serves you, and leave the rest. Thanks for understanding and for growing with us on this journey.